Warning: this episode is intended for mature audiences and includes candid discussions of abuse. Listener discretion is advised. You're listening to the Voices of Recovery podcast. This is a special episode featuring a recovering addict. Hi, my name is Sophie X. I'm the host and producer of the Voices of Recovery podcast. I'm joined here today by Paul. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Sophie.
Thank you so much for doing the service of reading the Just for Today and the SPAD for the middle of December.
It was my pleasure.
I so appreciate your voice, and I also want people to get to know who Paul is. So you're on the special series for the month of December centered on illness and recovery. You and I met at the Hopeful in Hicksville meeting, which here in Nassau County of New York is a daily meeting.
Always been very kind to me. Always very
that's
nice
held
to me.
Monday
You always
through
say
Friday.
hello.
But I also took a liking to you because of your persistence and how often I see you in that meeting despite your physical challenges. I admire that about you because a lot of people, when they become ill, whether it's temporarily or terminally, will use that as a reason to relapse. But you take your recovery very seriously. And for a newcomer like myself, when I was in a wheelchair, I had you in my mind and I said, you know what, if Paul can do it, I can do it. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to make in-person meetings like you are able to. But I want you to know that you inspire me, and that's the reason why I had you on this podcast.
I'm glad that that's the case, and I didn't even know that you were in a wheelchair.
Yeah, it was a short-term thing. But you're affected by a more long-term illness. And despite that, you've remained clean. So I wanted our listeners to get to know you a little bit better as a person and for you to tell a bit of your story. So go ahead, take it away.
Well, I was an able-bodied human being for most of my life. My story is the same as any other person in recovery story, and that's not important. But I got to recovery what I would consider very late, despite many opportunities to do so sooner. But I am blessed that on Christmas Eve I will have 17 and a half years clean.
That's amazing.
The illness that I'm dealing with is a progressive neurological disease for which there is neither treatment nor cure as of yet. We can remain hopeful that there will be one. I don't think it is a disease that is a priority for researchers because there are not a lot of people who have it. I don't know the numbers. I'm told that 1 in 7 people will be impacted by this disease, whether it's by knowing someone who has it or by having it themselves. I think it's more by having someone in their life affected by it.
As a scientist myself who worked in neuroscience, I can tell you that a lot of neurological research overlaps. So if we're looking for answers that have, let's say, something to do with epilepsy, that may also impact strides that we take forward in other diseases. And so I want you to remain hopeful in knowing this little piece of information. The brain is kind of like a ball of spaghetti, and so many things are interacting and touching each other. And because neuroscience research is one of the major hubs outside of cancer, right, of chemical research and biochemical research, it's only a matter of time. As long as you stay alive and clean, that's all we care about.
I believe that, and my particular disorder, people are usually given a very short time to live, but people can also live for a long time. So I'm choosing to believe that I will be in the latter category.
Yeah.
I don't notice the progression until something sort of serious happens. I didn't notice when I first started. My wife said, "Why are you walking like that?" I didn't even notice. I notice now, and I choose to believe that it's going to be a slow decline, shall we say. I'd like it to be no decline, but realistic. I'm going to go ahead and say that what I usually say is, having been in recovery as long as I was before the onset of this disease, prepared me for this and enabled me to handle it. My friends keep asking me, why aren't you angry? And I don't really have an answer other than to say, I still feel very lucky. Every day I feel lucky. I'm lucky I have a loving family. I have some really good friends. I get to meet new people all the time. I got to meet you. So I'm not angry. Sometimes I can get in a funk. I'm not going to lie. I had a little setback earlier this week, and I was like, if this is a permanent thing, I'm really going to be unhappy. But it was just thankfully temporary. I have a great doctor. It took me a long time to finally find a neurologist who understands and is a human being. I could call her, and if she doesn't answer the phone, she'll call me back within a very short period of time. And none of my other doctors ever in my life would be that responsive. But recovery really prepared me for this. And this, maybe I can look at it as a gift rather than a punishment, you know. Yeah, a curse. It's not a curse. I still have my mind, and there are a lot of resources available to me if I ask for help.
Yeah.
And guess where I learned to ask for help? And going to meetings. I'm in a wheelchair. The wheelchair I'm in right now weighs 430 pounds without me in it. So there are very few meetings that I can go to in this chair, but there are meetings that I can go to in what I refer to as my old fashioned chair, which requires someone to push me. And there are meetings with chairlifts. The Hopeful and Hicksville group, unbeknownst to me, raised the money necessary to install the chairlift that is there so that I could continue to go to that meeting. And Sophie is holding her eyes and making me want to cry because my gratitude to the people at that meeting is um, beyond words. And I said, "Oh, it's not for me. It's for there are other people with walking disabilities," and I said, "Oh, it's for them." But I think I was the grain of sand in that clam that caused that pearl to grow, and it was a donation to the church, and I know it wasn't cheap because I have looked into it for myself, for my house. You know, the only way I get to meetings is someone says, "Hey, Paul, I'll pick you up," and I'm a terrible person because I always drove. I was never a good passenger. And part of this journey has me trying to become a good passenger, and I still say, "Oh, look out! We're gonna go right here." You know, I'm learning, and I'm learning all kinds of things about the world and about myself, and so I'm going to try to treat it as a gift of recovery.
I mean, if you look at it in that perspective, it totally is. It has shown you, first of all, how strong your recovery is, right? But you have a substantial amount of clean time, right?
At that time I had probably 14 years. When I was first diagnosed, I was diagnosed with a different disorder,
Mm.
and I was diagnosed by a doctor with absolutely no bedside manner.
Ugh.
And I was sitting next to my wife, And he said, if you have a bucket list, you ought to get going on it quickly.
Oh,
And
God.
and I was just expecting him to say you need back surgery or you need knee surgery. And I sat in a room and I had tears in my eyes, obviously, because I wasn't expecting the diagnosis that he was giving. But at the same time, I thought, like, how lucky I am because I don't really have a bucket list. I have been blessed in my life to have been able to do anything that I ever wanted to do. As an example, I have a dear friend who passed away recently, and I spoke at his wake. And he died from a terrible brain tumor that he had growing in his head for a really long time and he didn't know about. But we used to golf every Tuesday for years. And we always took off Tuesday because he was a doctor. And he kiddingly said, all the doctors take off on Wednesday, so I take off on Tuesday so I can steal their patients on Wednesday. But what he said to me was, did you ever regret all those Tuesdays that we took off from work to golf? And my answer was no, of course not. And I wasn't even sick then. So in that doctor's office, I thought to myself, like the only thing on my bucket list really was I always wanted to learn how to dance like ballroom dancing. And if that's the one thing that I can't do, I certainly can live with that because I always did whatever I wanted to do. And I don't mean that in a selfish way, I mean that in a good way. So, with tears in my eyes, I was still thankful, even faced with that terrible diagnosis.
It's a test of your recovery, in essence.
Well, certainly, certainly. I know that, of course, in my mind, I said, well, this is permission for me to use whatever I want and get it legally, you know. And people keep saying to me, oh, well, why don't you smoke pot? Or why don't you take gummies? And I'm like, because I don't need to. There's not a lot of pain involved with this, and the pain is manageable without the use of narcotics. I'm dealing with it. I have everything I need. I have an aide who comes for 40 hours a week
Wow.
because I can't really be alone. I mean, I can be alone, but not for long periods of time because there are many things I can't do for myself. I'm lucky I can still shower, but I won't shower if there's not someone in the next room because if I fall down, I can't get up.
I've been there
Yeah,
before, needing
yeah.
to have somebody just a door away, just in
Yeah,
case, God forbid.
and I've had to have people pick me up naked from the floor, and that's not a place that I relished being. But again, I always pull newcomers aside when they raise their hand and they say, I'm new and I need help, because I tell them that that is the most courageous thing I've seen someone do. And it's not easy. When I was new, I kept quiet. I didn't raise my hand and say, hi, I'm Paul. I have 2 days clean. I didn't have that level of courage. But I have come to respect that level of courage. And I encourage it whenever I see it. I say to someone, like, welcome, you're in the right place. And everyone in this room has been where you are. And when people give you their phone numbers, they want you to call.
Being able to ask for help, you're right, is one of the most important things that we can do for ourselves. Being in the position that you're in, you definitely need to make meetings, right? I mean, it's an opportunity to see your friends. It's an opportunity to hear the message. It's an opportunity to complete the cycle that is the 12th step, right? Giving back to the newcomer and making sure that the person that still suffers knows that there's somebody there for them. You being physically present at a meeting is inspiring for people. Being able to see you show up, Take your time coming in, take your time coming out. And you just let me know that the Hopeful in Hicksville group donated the chairlift to the church. I mean, I was in tears. I was in tears. That goes to show what the Fellowship of NA really is. The fact that people pick you up and bring you to meetings to help you participate in your recovery. If that's not a gift of recovery, the only certain thing in life is death. That's the only certain thing in life. And however we get there, we might as well have a sweet ride. And if you're sitting in the passenger seat and you get to see the flowers and you get to see the fall leaves and you get to see the snow and be a passenger, it's a gift, in my opinion. And the fact that you have that perspective is very important. So tell me a little bit about how you came to recovery. What was your life like when you were using? And what made you get clean and stay clean?
That's a big question. I had an idyllic childhood. I come from a large family. Both my parents were professionals. Both my parents were great human beings who had a strong spirituality. But I grew up in the 60s. I have older siblings, many older siblings. I had friends who went to Woodstock. I was too young to go to Woodstock, but I grew up, I was sexually abused when I was very young. But I'm not using that as an excuse because I grew up surrounded by a culture of drinking and getting high. I often want to ask a room full of addicts how many people here were sexually abused, but I'm sure that's true throughout the entire world. And you could use that as an excuse. But I always just wanted to get high. From a very early age, and I had easy access to you name it. I was never a needle user, but I had access to every kind of pill you could name or imagine. Starting in elementary school, I was getting high. In middle school, I was getting high every day. In high school, I was drinking every day. And yet, I was a good student. And by me saying I was a good student, I was a terrible student. But I'm a white boy from suburbia. And who wrote all the exams? White boys from suburbia. And I had the ability to get into the mind of the person who wrote the exam and know what the answer was without even understanding the question. So I did very well in high school. I went to college and did the same thing. I never did any of the work. And I feel badly about it because I could have learned so much and I learned nothing. And I went on to graduate school and did the same thing. And I went on to have a career as a professional. And I was just a mess personally. I was drinking and doing drugs all day long. Cocaine came along. I was high on cocaine when I graduated high school. I always kid around and say cocaine wasn't even dangerous then. That's how early in cocaine's existence in this country I found it. I mean, I had a really high profile job. I was living a life that people would think was something. Only I wasn't living that life. I was just pretending I was going through the motions. Somehow I would show up. I would be hungover every day. I would go out for lunch and I'm only going to have one drink and have four, five, six. I would smoke a joint every morning just to get out of bed. And yet somehow I found a really great woman who I married. I have three beautiful children. And it sort of all came crashing down around me. And I have a judge to thank for my finally getting clean. Now, I had been to rehabs, I had been to detoxes. When I qualify, I say, yeah, the most clean time I ever had was 28 days. And people in recovery understand what that means. It was
Mm-hmm.
a 28-day rehab. But what happened with the judge changed my life. And I've always meant to write her a letter. I want to, but I'm afraid to at the same time because I never used my disease as an excuse for my behavior. And I don't want that to come out of such a letter. But I finally went to an NA meeting and something was different. I had been to lots of meetings in my life because people around me would be like, you have to do something. And I would be like, oh, I went to a meeting today. I went to the other fellowship for a long time, and I would be drunk in meetings. I laugh because I really like Hall's Mentholyptus cough drops as candy, but I would eat a whole pack of them in an AA meeting thinking that no one would smell me. So I feel a little guilty now when I have one, and I have some right here in the bowl on the table because I think that maybe people will think I'm trying to cover the smell.
That's so funny.
It's true,
Yeah.
you know. But something happened when I finally got to my first NA meeting. I used to go to friends from rehabs anniversaries at NA meetings. Hi. And then when my whole world was crashing around me, my whole professional life was crashing around me because I just couldn't function anymore. I went to an NA meeting. And for some reason, I went to another NA meeting and I had been clean that whole day. And I don't know how. And people remembered me from the meeting the day before and told me where to go to the next meeting. And I went to the next meeting. And, people say make 90 meetings in 90 days and the rest will take care of itself. I went to a meeting every day for years.
Wow.
And the only time I didn't go to a meeting was when I was on vacation with my family. And shame on me for that. My sponsor said to me, what, are you on vacation from your recovery? But when I was on vacation with my family, I was busy and I was safe. It was years before I let my kids know what I was and what I was doing. People would be like, oh, are your kids coming to your anniversary? And I was like, my kids don't even know I'm in NA. I'm glad they do know. I think it's important for them to know. I always have my fingers crossed. Yes, they participate in the activities that normal people participate in, and I don't see them behaving the way I behaved. So I don't encourage it, but I don't discourage it because they have their own paths. Yeah, they get high. Do they get high like I got high? No. I laugh when they get high because it's like nothing. You know what I mean?
I personally think it's important for people's children to know that they're in recovery because if life gets out of hand for them and they realize that they too are addicts, they have visibly seen their own parent recover. And so that gives them the opportunity to say, there's a place that I can go, to know that these rooms exist and to see how much love is in the rooms, right? To say, I can't love myself right now, but there is a place that I can go where I can be loved and I can recover and I have hope. So, personally, I think that it's important for one's children when they are of appropriate age or even as children, as even as babies, to be in the rooms because when you're a newcomer and you see a new mom coming in with her baby, if that baby is crying, you see somebody else pick up that baby, right? And coddle the baby until the baby calms down. That to me is so powerful to say that you have a seat in here no matter what is going on in your life, right? You're a young mom, you're babysitting your kids, you can't find a babysitter and you're here and your kids are welcomed. I feel like that's one of the most powerful things that I've seen in these rooms.
Yeah. And I think, and it was in one of the readings that you had me do, and it's in a lot of readings, we take our recovery everywhere we go.
Yes.
Someone who you treat well doesn't have to know you're in recovery to get the message, which is like by your helping someone, anyone, And my father used to do this. My father would pull over and help people on the side of the road. My father was a doctor. I'll never forget, we were going somewhere and we pulled over to a rest stop on the side of the road, and there was an old man in the bathroom with Parkinsonism, and he couldn't zip himself up, and my father helped him. And I was torn between, really, Dad? And like, that's my father,
Mm-hmm.
And my father was never in recovery. My father, I think I saw him drunk once ever, but he would help anyone, anywhere, anytime. And, by helping people, that's how we help ourselves. And when we're in our worst place, by helping someone, we help ourselves. And I could never give back to NA what NA gave me. And, I see that all the time. People who I barely know will call me and say, like, I know you live where you live and I live nearby and I'm going to try to go to the meeting today. Would you like a ride? And I think that's fantastic, like, and as bad a passenger as I am, and as picky a passenger as I am, because, like, there are some people who I know in NA who I will not accept a ride from. No offense to them, and you know who you are. Um, but I will accept rides from people who I never would have expected to accept a ride from. And I hate to say this, because of my hearing disability and the fact that I do rely on eye contact and lip reading, live meetings are really important to me. I'm also very lucky. I have a group of men who we try to meet once a week, and we've been going through the literature for years. And it's not an NA group, it is all NA members. And it's all men who I look up to. And, I have told them on many occasions they've saved my life, because during the pandemic, we were still meeting. We were meeting on Zoom sometimes, or we'd meet in someone's yard, weather permitting. The actual physical act of a meeting. I know people who got clean on Zoom.
It's me.
That's inconceivable to me. And at the same time, it is majestic. It's wonderful, because this works. People got clean before they had cell phones, and some people didn't have a phone. They would have to go to a payphone to call their sponsor or to call other recovering addicts. I have so many people who I can call and who call me. So if I don't, and I don't make nearly as many meetings as I wish I could, I guess I make the meetings I need to make, and I'm never going to stop if it's within my power. And there are accessible meetings for me in this wheelchair if that's all I can do. People lift me into their cars physically if I can't get in. How great is that? How great is this fellowship?
It's beyond words.
And the whatever it is, the butterfly effect, the ripple effect, what we learn in the fellowship, we carry into our lives. And I was spouting. I hate to say the word platitudes, but slogans to my kids long before they knew where I got them. And hopefully they're out doing the same thing. I've watched my daughters stand up for people, and I have felt guilty in my life because I wasn't standing up for people when I should have been when I was in elementary school. To this day, I feel guilty about it. And I know that my daughters were standing up for people who were getting bullied.
We lead by example, right?
Let's hope.
Just like your father helped the man that was
Yeah,
suffering,
yeah,
you today are helping other people.
yeah.
And I thank you for just being you I thank
No.
you for making yourself available, and I thank you for staying clean, and I thank you for participating in your recovery and being a catalyst for people like myself. When I myself had my own hard times, I remembered you, didn't know your name, but I remembered you, and I remembered seeing you and said, I don't have to use over this.
Lots of people in worse shape than me don't use. Lots of people have gone through far worse things than I dare even imagine. I don't even want to think about and don't use. So, like, how dare I consider it, you know? And I have said this to people around me who aren't in recovery when they say, oh, like, oh, this is going wrong or that is going wrong, and why me and why me and why me? And I say, it could be, it didn't have to be this good.
Mm-hmm.
And I only learned that here. If I was paying attention, I would have learned it from my parents, but I was too busy, too young in the grips of the disease, the lower power, as opposed to the higher power. And the higher power is all around us. And, you know, we meet people in our lives who are not in recovery, but who are beacons of recovery. And we are fortunate to meet people who are beacons of recovery in recovery. Lucky us.
I do feel very lucky myself. Thank you for being on the podcast, and thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for being my friend, Paul.
Thank you for being mine, and thanks for having me on here.
It's a pleasure.
And thanks for doing this.
Absolutely. The Voices of Recovery podcast is an independent production of the Works of Wisdom. We welcome your questions and donations via PayPal at voicesofrecoverypod@gmail.com. This podcast is an independent production and is not affiliated with, associated with, authorized by, endorsed by, or in any way officially connected with Narcotics Anonymous or any of its subsidiaries or affiliates. While NA literature may be read during episodes for the purpose of supporting recovery, such use does not constitute an official endorsement or representation by Narcotics Anonymous. In accordance with NA tradition, the NA name is not to be used to endorse or be affiliated with any outside enterprise, and no such endorsement or affiliation is implied. Music is by Sage. Thanks for listening to the Voices of Recovery podcast.